Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., keep moving from this mountain. Address at Spelman College on 10 April 1960. Mountain of Segregation. There is another mountain we have been in long enough. We have been in the mountain of racial segregation long enough. We all know how long we have been in this mountain, so we need not go back and give the historical development of it. It is now time for us to turn and take our journey towards the promised land of integration. In a real sense, segregation in any form is wrong. Segregation is wrong because it substitutes an I-it relationship for the I-thou relationship. Segregation is wrong because it relegates individuals to the status of this thing rather than taking the high moral position of elevating them in the status of persons. Segregation is wrong because it assumes that God made a mistake. And finally, it is wrong because it stands in the face of the great American creed that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And so we must go out and say to our nation and say to South Africa and say to the world that we have been in the mountain of segregation too long. Now we must move out. Segregation is a cancer in the body politic, which must be removed before our democratic health can be realized. The underlying philosophy of segregation is diametrically opposed to the underlying philosophy of democracy and Christianity, and all sophisms and the logicians cannot make them lie down together. We must make it clear in our struggle to end this thing called segregation. We are not struggling for ourselves alone. We are not struggling only to free 17 million Negroes. The festering sore of segregation debilitates the white man as well as the Negro. We are struggling to save the souls of America. We are struggling to save America in this very important, decisive hour of our history. This is why the student movement that is taking place at this time all over our country is so significant. Let nobody fool you. This movement is one of the most significant movements in the whole civil rights struggle. For you students, along with other students all over the nation, have become of age, and you are saying in substance that segregation is wrong and that you will no longer accept it and adjust to it. This movement says, more clearly than was ever said before, that segregation cannot be maintained in the South without leading to chaos and social disintegration. The beautiful thing about it is that you are not merely demanding service at the lunch counter, though that is a basic part of it. You're not merely demanding a cup of coffee and a hamburger here and there. You are demanding respect. You are saying in substance, if you respect my dollar, you will also have to respect me as a person. An individual who is not concerned about his selfhood and his freedom is at that moment committing moral and spiritual suicide, and you are standing up to the great determination. You have taken up deep groins of the century. The students have taken the passionate longings of the ages and filtered them in their own souls and fashioned a creative protest. It is one of the glowing epics of the time, and I predict that it will win. That will have to win because this demand is basic American demand. Victor Hugo said many years ago, there's nothing more powerful than an ideal whose time has come. The ideal whose time has come is in the ideal of freedom and human dignity. Whenever men are assembled today, whether they are in Johannesburg, Nairobi, Accra, Berlin, Atlanta, New York, Montgomery, or Little Rock, the cry is always the same. We want to be free. And so, today, let men everywhere join in this quest for freedom by moving out of the mountain of racial segregation. This is the mountain that we must leave. We have dwelled in it too long enough. On this Founders Day, if you forget all I've said, I hope you won't forget this mountain. In this third installment of segregation, I'm going to ask 2 questions, 2 out of 3 questions for the 3 points that I want to quickly hit on. And again, these aren't easy questions to ask because we're not a monolith. So I know this part of it's going to upset people the most, but I would like you to leave in the comment section what you thought of the speech when it comes to the segregation part of it. Point number 1, which is a question. Can what we call racism really be eradicated? I want you to think deeply on that and put in the comment section what you think about that. Point number 2, which is also going to be formed as a question. As this is a free country, should you be able to be free to define what you think diversity should be? Now, I'm going to add a caveat to that. What I mean by that question, because it may throw people off, do you think that some parts or all parts of an institution should force you to intermingle with particular groups of people that you don't prefer to mingle with? And where is the line between keeping to yourself and your interest group and basic rights for others? So keep that question in mind, because it was such a loaded and vague question. There's so many answers can come out of that. Hope someone in the comment section also answers that one. Let's talk about segregation, because MLK, understandably so, being mostly based in the South, used the South as a shining example, because this is when they were using fire hoses. This was the time of freedom rides. It was a lot of bad things. This was the time of people being murdered, and for then decades, not until I was a teenager and even older, that people were starting to finally get prosecuted just for wanting integration. Okay. What I want to talk about in this third and final point is more of a question. Why do you think he didn't touch on the de facto segregation in the South and also the segregations which caused the riots in the West? Because the thing about it is, and this is what annoys me about some black people from the North, because I've met some, and I'm not saying you're all this way, so don't be writing me getting nasty about it. I've had it and heard stories of Northerners who are black throwing it in Southern-born people's face. At least we didn't have to move on a different side of the sidewalk and all of that. But the fact of the matter is, though segregation was not an absolute fact in the North, it was kind of law, and they did do a lot of redlining, and you cannot say that's not a form of segregation. So, in that third and final point in the comment section, if you can, I would like someone to address what they knew segregation to be like outside of the American South. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll get into the final point, violence. Thank you.